Back on Pro Football today here on SportsGrid. Thanks for being with us. I'm Adam Kaufman, joined again here by Scott Wetzel and Tom Vecchio. That's a wrap. Super Bowl is over. Congrats to the Philadelphia Eagles, Super Bowl 59 winners, and honestly, sweat-free if you bet them too. It was never even close. Don't be fooled by the final score. 24-0 at the half. Turns into a 40-22 game by the end, only because of really garbage time points there out of the Chiefs. The Eagles, with a few minutes left, decided Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley, Dallas Goedert, A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, you name it. You guys don't even need to be part of it. You can go rejoice on the sideline and be with your head coach, Nick Sirianni, drenched in Gatorade with 2-3 minutes still left in this game. It was Kenny Pickett, Kenneth Gainwell, the men who were just running out the clock. This game, I think the biggest thing, guys, the biggest shock, the biggest storyline, I want your main takeaways, but it has to at least begin with the fact that I think maybe Tom and I more so than you, Scott, based on what you've said all night, but floored by the fact that this wasn't even competitive.
Yeah, listen, I didn't think it would be in the end. I did think it would be close to the half, and I thought Philadelphia up 2 scores would tack on one more and they'd win by 17, so I didn't come far from that. I must say, we hit our same game parlay. We did really well. Props also came through. As old fantasy players will tell you, man, those yards in the final 2, 3, 4 minutes all count towards the props. And we had so many guys go over their numbers that were not going to go over their numbers if they just would have run out the clock Philadelphia, but they didn't. But really the story, listen, nothing against Philadelphia or Jalen Hurts and all that other stuff, but the story is, it's Kansas City. It's Patrick Mahomes. It's that offense that was, for the most part, for 3.5 quarters, just got awful at him, or Tom. It's just, I don't know how you explain it. It's crazy how bad they were.
Completely inept for really how bad they were. And it was kind of a magnification of what we saw from them at times, where we were discussing in the pregame show, the only team to not reach 30 points throughout the regular season. And that's what we saw. And all the things that they struggled with all happened at the same time. And we can break down some of that. We can talk about the players, which players went over, which players went under. We're coming up against the break, Adam, and we will get into all of this. But the Eagles win. The game goes over. Congrats to the Eagles if you had futures, whatever it might have been.
Truly amazing thing, too, is I've tweeted out multiple times in the last little bit what a terrible football game this was. And I'll tell you what, the country disagrees, because this isn't a pro-Eagles sentiment. Everyone, unless you're a Chiefs fan, wanted Kansas City to lose. People just dancing on graves tonight.
It's finally here. The big game is just days away, and SportsGrid is live from New Orleans all week long, bringing you the latest news, insights, and analysis from the biggest names in the game. And on game day, we've got you covered all day long, with expert picks, live odds, and everything you need to make the most out of the biggest game of the year. Don't miss a second, and it's all happening only on SportsGrid.
Even the great Nick Saban had to put his team together to do it his way. We know Coach Ryan's coming in to come run the offense, who was his right-hand man, a good friend of his at UW. And, now he's coming in. Everything is going the way we want this thing to be. Coach DeBoer is a great recruiter. He's a great father of players. He's a great leader of men. He's going to do great.
Only on SportsGrid.
It was the greatest show ever. It's funny, and you know what I like? You have balls. The stuff you do on that show, you are half crazy.
I feel like a good sense of humor, and I like to show it off. And this kind of originally started where people were, the hot dog eating challenge was something that I always wanted to do, and every 4th of July, and I was like, I could eat a ton of hot dogs.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Back with us on Pro Football Today. Again, the Eagles 40-22 winners, Super Bowl 59. Later on in the program, before we're out of here, we'll look ahead to Super Bowl futures for Super Bowl 60 right around the corner. It's never too early to look ahead, but as I teased before, boys, let's pick it up here. Tom, biggest takeaway from this game?
The Eagles won, and it didn't require Saquon to have a massive game. And, a lot of people talked about throughout the Eagles season, A.J. Brown not having the biggest games at times, and it was a Saquon team, and players had to play different roles, and you couldn't be the star. And a lot of that was true tonight, where Saquon was actually the one that wasn't being the star.
Mm-hmm.
He was held to, less than 100 yards combined, which
Right.
is not something that we had seen from Saquon, especially with the recent run that he's been on. And it is a team effort to win, and that's what it requires, whether it's early in the season, Saquon has big games. Late in the season, other players have to step up at times. A.J. Brown being held to 10 yards in a playoff game. They still find ways to win. And honestly, credit to, the coaching staff. Obviously, they're going to have more leave. He's going to be a head coach. But from the top to the bottom, they constructed a roster that everyone had a part. And it didn't have to be one player every single game. You have to just pull the right levers, and it brings a team effort to win.
Look, Scott, I didn't believe it in the 2 weeks of lead up and all the conversation obviously surrounding this game, but I know you did. Lots of people, a lot of sharps, quite frankly. A lot of the professional bettors that I spoke with were screaming unders on Saquon Barkley, whether it's rushing, receiving combined yardage, rushing yardage, longest rush yardage. It was just, will he score a touchdown? Who knows? I mean, that's, something of a wild card. I never in a million years would have guessed the Eagles would put up 40 points and Saquon would not find the end zone. That, to me, might be the most shocking thing to come out of this game. But for all the people that said, I don't think this is going to be a Saquon game, and you were in that camp, congrats, because you nailed it. The Eagles found a way to win, obviously, and the defense was a gigantic part of it. But offensively, it was the other guys.
Yeah, I'll pat myself on the back because no one else will, right? I mean, I had
No, we said credit to you. They're going to win by 30. We'll put up 30 and win by multiple scores.
It was to perfection. I mean, it really, even the 17-point difference, it was 18 points. I had it at 34-17, right? But I thought they would stuff the box. They did. I thought they would control Barkley. They did. And I thought that it would be up to Jalen Hurts to throw the football, and he did. Although I will say, if you just looked at the box score, it's one of those goofy games where I imagine Jalen Hurts got the MVP, but in reality, it was the Eagles' defense that really should be the MVP in this game, because if I told you before the game, guys, that Philadelphia would have 57 yards rushing out of Saquon Barkley on 25 carries, so it's not like they only did it a couple times, and their leading receiver was Devontae Smith, no. A.J. Brown, no. How about Saquon Barkley? 6 receptions and his 40 yards. It wasn't even for like 120 yards. Like he took one of these and then went the distance, right? He didn't have any long runs. His longest run was only 10 yards. Jalen Hurts, threw the ball for 221 yards. Nothing crazy. So it's like, how do you look at that and say they scored 40 points, but the defense, the interception return, set him up for another short touchdown? It was the defense that really kind of stole the show.
If I'm not mistaken, we don't know the MVP yet. I think we presume it's going to be Jalen Hurts, but I mean, like you said, and I don't disagree with the feeling. If you'd love to just give it to the defense, but you can't give it to a unit. So who does it become at that point? Is it DeJean, who obviously scored the touchdown, birthday boy, and great story, great narrative, great bet if you invested in it. And I've seen some people on social media flashing their tickets, trying to speak it into existence. Please God, please, all of that. I don't think ultimately he'll win. I do think it'll be Hurts, but yeah, I mean, look, and it'll be controversial. Like, I'll pull up his Twitter account, Bert Breer, who obviously covers the NFL for MMQB. He tweeted out a little bit ago. Where is it? I had it before.
About Hurts?
If a quarterback wins the MVP while his defense shuts Patrick Mahomes out for nearly 3 quarters and holds the Chiefs' offense under 100 yards deep into the second half, then I don't know what to say about the voters.
Again, it's to your point. They can't give it to a unit, so it's almost as if they just default to the QB.
Right.
And again, we can get into who deserves it. Is the Hurts the best offensive player because you're not going to be giving it to a unit? But they didn't win the game because of one interception return.
No.
Right.
So again, at a certain point, while we agree the defense has it, they're just going to default to Hurts.
Yeah. And he did have 3 touchdowns. Ran for 1, passed for 2. Threw for over 200 yards. Ran for 72, the most in a quarterback in Super Bowl history. So it's not like he was just mediocre. This is not Eli Manning, I will say. Nothing for nothing. But this is not Eli Manning winning Super Bowl MVP. I mean, he actually accounted for 3 touchdowns and a bunch more.
Hurts was awesome.
Give you a wild stat courtesy of ESPN's Mike Reese. Stat at the Super Bowl, Eagles did not blitz a single time on Patrick Mahomes' 42 dropbacks. Not once! Wow.
It's finally here. The big game is just days away, and SportsGrid is live from New Orleans all week long, bringing you the latest news, insights, and analysis from the biggest names in the game. And on game day, we've got you covered all day long, with expert picks, live odds, and everything you need to make the most out of the biggest game of the year. Don't miss a second, and it's all happening only on SportsGrid.
Even the great Nick Saban had to put his team together to do it his way. We know Coach Ryan's coming in to come run the offense, who was his right-hand man, a good friend of his at UW. And, now he's coming in. Everything is going the way we want this thing to be. Coach DeBoer is a great recruiter. He's a great father of players. He's a great leader of men. He's going to do great.
Only on SportsGrid.
It was the greatest show ever. It's funny, and you know what I like? You have balls. I mean, the stuff you do on that show, you are half crazy.
I feel like a good sense of humor, and I like to show it off. And this kind of originally started where people were the hot dog eating challenge was something that I always wanted to do in every 4th of July, and I was like, I could eat a ton of hot dogs.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
We should find out momentarily the Super Bowl 59 most valuable player. Again, I think we're all assuming Jalen Hurts, sort of defaulting to the quarterback because it is hard to pick one defensive player out of a dominant unit here in this performance here today. But look, we've got plenty of time ahead of us, another half hour, and we'll be able to, again, look ahead to expectations for next year. And there's some stuff surrounding the Eagles' schedule that's now becoming a topic on social media in terms of opponents and all of that stuff. But part of the conversation, obviously, is going to be what does this mean for Kansas City going forward? Because all the talk the last couple of weeks, guys, was about how we were about to see, it was almost inevitable, we were going to see the first three-peat in NFL history.
Yep.
And the Eagles spoil it, much as they did for the Patriots, although that was different because they won in the middle of a multiple championship run. It was, Pats, Eagles, Pats. This obviously would have been a three-peat that the Eagles stood in front of and dominated. And we did not get, by any stretch, the best of Patrick Mahomes. I don't just mean here in this game or in this postseason. I mean throughout this year. He's not old. He's not about to retire. He's not done. He's not whatever. But he's also not the GOAT. And there are a lot of people that are ready to proclaim him that, and that's fine. I'm not saying he couldn't possibly be at some point, but games like this just further show, like, it's okay. He's got a long way to go. Let's take a step back, appreciate what we're seeing. The Chiefs are still an incredible team, and they're in maybe in the midst of a great run. But I guess, Scott, that's the question. Is it midst, or are we kind of starting to see the end?
I wouldn't say the end. You got to figure Worthy's going to be that much better next year as a sophomore. You get Rashee Rice. Hopefully he fully recovers. Maybe they go out and they go get a T. Martin, from Cincinnati, who figures to move away from the Bengals.
Higgins.
Or T. Higgins, rather. Right, T. Martin, Tennessee quarterback. They could go get him, too, if they wanted to. But listen, there's too much talent, and when you have Mahomes, I don't think they're done by any stretch. Tough division now. The Denver's going to be pretty good, and the Chargers, so it won't be a cakewalk for them. But I'd be surprised if they did make the playoffs, if you want to say they're going to go that far back. No. But are they going to be consensus favorites? Did they get exposed today? NFL draft, how many defensive linemen went up the draft board today because we saw what the Philadelphia Eagles defensive line did to the Kansas City Chiefs offensive line, right?
I think we're getting to a point where, we were talking about this during the game, that there's going to be an argument and just a general discourse across the NFL in the offseason that it's not just the Chiefs as the odds-on favorite, at least to come out of the AFC. This opens up the opportunity for Lamar and the Ravens, Allen and the Bills, Burrow and the Bengals, and then some of those other teams to make a move up the board to really challenge the Chiefs. And I think when we're talking about Mahomes specifically, as long as Andy Reid is there, I have full confidence that the Chiefs will do something. But I think they need to find a solution at running back because they clearly don't have. And maybe it's just a factor, like I said on the pregame show, Pacheco's not fully healthy. Because if he were to be fully healthy, they will have a different offense. But I almost want to say the Chiefs need to find ways to win in different ways. It can't just be Mahomes. Because when they don't have a running game, their offense doesn't do a whole lot. And when they get Rice back, as you said, and Worthy's healthy, and whatever happens with Kelsey, and I assume Juju won't be there, and they bring in this receiver, and Hopkins leaves, and et cetera, they need to find ways to win in different ways. And it can't all be on Mahomes because it has to be a strong running game, at least to start, and then allowing Mahomes to have the creativity because he has time in the play action. That's what I think will happen for the Chiefs.
Yeah, I think what was concerning today is that it truly was, obviously, if I'm taking the quarterback out of it, removing Patrick Mahomes, it was one guy. It was Worthy. That's it. I mean, Kelsey, I guess, by the end was okay, went 4 for 39. But after that, I mean, what were you going to expect out of the, corpses of DeAndre Hopkins and Juju Smith-Schuster and, to some degree, Hollywood Brown?
I was expecting them to just play a part. And this is kind of my take on the Chiefs coming into the season, where I had said on many shows where I did not expect Kelsey to have a huge year because he wasn't going to have a big year because they have so many weapons. It's not just one player needing to do everything. They can have, a little bit of Hopkins here, a little bit of Juju here, maybe some mainly Worthy, but then a little bit of Pacheco, a little bit of Hunt, and everyone does just enough to move the offense forward. It doesn't have to be reliant on one player. That clearly didn't happen tonight, and it had to be one player, and that's what they need to fix. They can't, and any offense, whether it's the Chiefs, whether it's another team as well, the Lions been so successful, they have multiple options on offense that one player can bring in one game, and then they can fall back to other options when they need to.
Yeah, they got to upgrade that wide receiver room.
Yeah.
There was a point where the game was still, kind of in play. I think it was 24-0 midway through the third quarter, and it was 4th and 3, 4th and 4, right around midfield. Kansas City went for it, and they called a play for DeAndre Hopkins. I mean, are you serious? You got a 40-year-old wide receiver who couldn't beat a snail in a race, and that's the guy you're going to call a play for with basically your life on the line? They didn't get it, and for all intents and purposes, that really was the ball game. So they got to upgrade that. They got to get Rice back. Hopefully he'll be better and fully recovered. But even if he is, they still need some weapons. They got to help the Mahomes with the offensive line for sure.
And to your point earlier, Adam, if let's say, and no, we're not going to make any speculation about Kelsey, he retires, doesn't, but let's say he plays next year, he's not going to be the Kelsey he was, and he's just that much older. So It has to be Rice coming back fully healthy, Worthy continuing to develop, which he is a strong talent. Kelsey, again, playing a part, but there has to be someone else in that mix that allows Mahomes and Andy Reid have play-calling creativity to move their offense forward.
Cooper Kupp? Free agent? Or not free agent, but,
yeah, on the move, partner,
available?
Yeah,
partner,
on the move. Absolutely.
Debo, on the move.
Yeah.
On the move.
Perfect
A player that would fit into the creative play-calling, doesn't need to be a strong route runner to have massive games, doesn't need to see 11 targets.
I agree with all of that, but you have to wonder, and this is sort of the gamesmanship that comes into play with all of this. I mean, what would it take? Like, how good does that package have to be in return for teams like the Niners, the Rams, to be willing to trade a weapon of that caliber, even, a bit injury-plagued and, getting up there in age and all of that, but nevertheless, a clear-cut weapon, if right, to the Chiefs?
Well, team shop rate, at a certain point, if they're going to move on from a player because of salary cap concerns where it might be, they need to take what they can get. Because if you're going to then cut the player and then be left with dead cap space, then that's the worst case scenario.
Sure.
Yeah, and that's why I don't think they'll really be able to trade Cooper Kupp, too, because if you trade for a guy, that means you're taking on his contract, and he's going to make $15 million a year, and he's not a $15 million a year player. So they probably won't be able to trade for him. But think about this. The Dolphins didn't have to give up a number 1 for Tyreek Hill 4 years ago. So for Deebo Samuel, who's going to be a free agent after next year, I don't think it'll take a number 1. I'm sure San Fran would say, you want to give me a number 2 for a guy that we're not going to re-sign?
A 2 and then a third down the line a couple years later.
Yeah.
It's doable.
No, look, nearly a year ago at this time, the talk was whether Brandon Ayuk was going to go for a first-round pick.
Right.
And ultimately, they didn't trade him and figured out the contract and all of that. But it is official, Jalen Hurts, Super Bowl MVP, which means now in 59 Super Bowls, there are 34 quarterbacks who have won the award, up near 60% of the time, obviously. If you guys, and I'll start with you, Scott, if you guys were voters, Hurts get your vote almost by default, or would you have gone elsewhere?
No, I'd give it to him. Like I said, first of all, it's the media. They want a story. You're going to give it to Sweat. You're going to give it to DeJean. I mean, or do you want your trophy to be with, Jalen Hurts? So, and like I said, he did, it wasn't like he was a nobody. 221 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, ran for another, so he counted for 3 TDs. I would have given it to Hurts.
Rushing, too. He was their leading rusher.
Their leading rusher, set the Super Bowl record for most rushing yards for a quarterback. So, yeah, I'm okay with Hurts getting it.
Yeah, I'm totally fine. Like I said, Hurts was awesome. Multiple touchdowns, led the offense. The one pick, it was great. The throw itself wasn't great, but it didn't hurt them. And maybe that's credit to their defense stepping up when they're working with Kansas City against their backs, whatever it might be. But Hurts does deserve it.
Yeah.
Total yardage in this one, not as lopsided after all the garbage scoring as you would have thought earlier, 345 to 275. For all of the penalty talk and all of that coming into the game, 8 for 59 for the Eagles. The Chiefs, 7 for 75.
Wow.
More penalty yards.
Close. Very close.
Very close, and more against KC. Not only is it not rigged, folks, maybe they wanted the Chiefs to lose. We'll be back on PFT.
Best dressed guy, let me tell you, next to me in terms of Radio Row. I want to get your thoughts quickly on the game, Philly and KC. How do you see it playing out?
Obviously you got Patrick Mahomes, who just finds a way to win. Then you got on the other side of the table an alien, and Barkley. I mean, he's had an incredible year.
Right.
I think whoever has the balls last is going to win the football game.
Only on SportsGrid.
I have no idea how to categorize what Mavericks GM Nico Harrison pulled off, Joe. All I know is that he shipped off Luka Doncic without telling Luka about it.
If you thought conditioning was a problem for Luka, wait till you get a load of Anthony Davis tripping over air and then missing 40 games because he's like Glass Joe's.
The early line. Only on SportsGrid.
Back here, Pro Football Today, and again, sort of basking in the afterglow of the Eagles' upset, narrow upset, but I think in the way they won, pretty significant upset of the Kansas City Chiefs, 40-22. Again, it was a tight spread. It was a virtual pick'em. It's not the catastrophic upset in that way. It's just the way in which Mahomes and that offense and the Chiefs were manhandled and outplayed. I'm not sure we can possibly give enough credit to Vic Fangio, the defensive coordinator for Philadelphia. I mean, despite, again, Jalen Hurts being the most valuable player of this game, all the talk that should come out of this game in the days and weeks to come as people sort of celebrate the season and look back and all, it should be on the defense. The defensive performance, much honestly as it was when Tom Brady won his 7th Super Bowl there with Tampa. I mean, he wasn't anything special in that game. They won because of the defense. The way that Tampa Bay similarly worked Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs' offense in that game. That ultimately is what got the job done. It was this. If you can find a way defensively, don't worry about getting into a shootout and outscoring them, kind of like how the Ravens and Bills are built to compete with Kansas City in the AFC. If you can find a way to stifle them defensively, that is how you ultimately, dethrone them.
There are two keys, and whether it's the draft, free agency, trades, acquisitions, I think there are two keys, maybe three. It is facilitating the pass, and you can break that in down two sections, would be protecting the quarterback and then enabling him with weapons, and then, hindering the pass on the defensive side, and that's what the Eagles did, is bringing the pressure and hindering Mahomes' ability to have clean pockets and move around and go through his reads, because so when you're drafting players, it has to be defensive players that are, downhill players getting after the quarterback, or it's going to be defensive or offensive linemen to protect the pass. That's what teams should be focusing in on.
I'm just amazed at how Kansas City just never could adapt. We gave the numbers before. Well, they have 7 or 8 possessions in the first half, and they had 1 first down. I mean, we're talking about Andy Reid, who's regarded as one of the great offensive minds in all the NFL, right? We're talking about Patrick Mahomes. Maybe the first drive, okay. Maybe even the second drive, okay, guys, they're doing this. We expected that, so this is what we're going to have to do. And it just never clicked in, even at halftime. They got a full 20 minutes plus at halftime with the Super Bowl. They came out in the third quarter, got the ball first. They're only down 24-0. You put some points on the board, you got yourself a ball game, and nothing until late third quarter when really the game was completely over. This game was 40-6, and then they tacked on 2 touchdowns in the final 5 minutes. So the 18-point spread is not indicative of really how one side of this thing was, but just no adjusting, no adapting, okay, we can't go left, so we got to go right out of Kansas City. I mean, the numbers aren't going to reflect it, right? He was 21 of 32 for 257 with 3 touchdown passes. I mean, you're going to bitch about that, Scott, but they're not indicative of his performance and that Kansas City's performance today.
And also at a certain point, when we get to that type of game script, the Eagles are almost playing a prevent at that point. Their defense, so the yards are going to be like, okay, well, he got yards. Well, they got yards because of the way the game script enabled it. It wasn't efficient yards.
Right.
So we're going to go through some player props or what we had from the head-to-heads, because a lot of players did well, a lot of players did very poorly. Notably, Xavier Worthy was amazing for the Chiefs side of things. Flew over his
in the
yardage.
second half anyway.
In the second half anyway. We talked about briefly his yardage, which was sitting at 32 at halftime. He obviously flies over that.
Live line was 32.
Correct. As you can see,
he had like 2.
Right. At 1, I believe.
I think it was 1. Yeah, 1
halftime.
reception for 1 yard. Yeah.
And he flies over that immensely in the second half. A.J. Brown, obviously, caught the touchdown, didn't cross that number. But the Mahomes rushing prop, which I spoke about at halftime, which was sitting at 18.5, he does go over that, but falls below his pregame number, which was 27.5 or 28.5.
Sunk a parlay for me.
Yeah, depending on where you got that. So good performances from a few players, but a lot of unders on Saquon, a lot of unders on some of the receivers from Philadelphia.
That's amazing. Mahomes went over, when everything was said and done with the goofy passing and in the final 2 minutes there, he goes over his number at 257. Hurts goes over his barely at 221. He went over his rushing one. Barkley, you mentioned, goes well under, obviously, his rushing one. Devontae Smith did go over his. It was low, but he got 4 receptions for 69 yards, so that was good. Brown went under his.
Including a 46-yarder.
Including, that helped a little bit, right? just a little there. Worthy blew by his. Kelsey went under his, right? Maybe in game you got something on it because he didn't have any receptions for the longest time, or one for like 5 yards, but he ends up with 4 with 39. And they ran the ball outside of Mahomes scrambles. They ran the ball 7 times for 24 yards.
I said Pacheco under 6.5 rushing attempts.
Yeah,
it was not. And listen, the number moved to 5.5. If you don't want to play at 5.5, I understand that, but it was. And they have no rushing. They had no rushing today.
Yeah.
And that's part of you were saying, like, oh, the first drive, okay, whatever, second drive, whatever. They need to make that adjustment in game, and having a consistent running game, I want to say, is part of the reason that they failed. If you are in a spot where the Eagles didn't have to worry about the Chiefs moving the ball on the ground at all. At all. They could sell out to guard the extra receivers and only blitz 4, and that was the key because they locked up the receivers and the tight ends, and it was all coverage sacks. And it's credit to the Eagles. I'm not saying coverage sacks is a bad thing. It's because the Eagles were so efficient.
Well, ultimately, and you alluded to this before, Tom, I do think that for the Chiefs, now I don't know how you figure it out. Maybe it is as simple as Isaiah Pacheco needs to get right because clearly he is still banged up and not himself, and we expected Kareem Hunt to be more of a factor in this one, at least in terms of usage. They only ran the ball 11 times as a team. 4 of those were Mahomes. That means you take out the quarterback. That is 7 rushes total for Kansas City. A lot of that I realized was game script, but even still, 11 for, again, removing Mahomes. So just take them out all together. 7 for 24 were the running backs in this game. Hunt, 3 for 9. P. Ryan, 1 for 8. Pacheco, 3 for 7. Just a disaster of a performance.
They had 7 drives in the first half, as we've talked about. That means they had less than 1 rushing attempt per drive in one half. And that we're talking about the whole game here.
Right. Figure
out the running game.
But also, let's remember, too, it was a disaster by the end. You allowed 40 points, but it wasn't that from the get-go. It was 7-0 at the end of the first quarter. You know, the Chiefs it was just sort of Mahomes or bust. And that was the plan.
The argument that the Ravens had where they abandoned the run last postseason, and that's why they lost, that's what's going to happen this offseason for the Chiefs. That's going to be the narrative. Get back to the running game.
Is it too early to look at Super Bowl odds for a year from now? I don't think so.
Best dressed guy, let me tell you, next to me in terms of Radio Row. I want to get your thoughts quickly on the game, Philly and KC. How do you see it playing out?
You know, obviously you got Patrick Mahomes, who just finds a way to win. Then you got on the other side of the table an alien, and Barkley. I mean, he's had an incredible year.
Right.
I think whoever has the balls last is going to win the football game.
Only on SportsGrid.
I have no idea how to categorize what Mavericks GM Nico Harrison pulled off, Joe. All I know is that he shipped off Luka Doncic without telling Luka about it.
If you thought conditioning was a problem for Luka, wait till you get a load of Anthony Davis tripping over air and then missing 40 games because he's like Glass Joe's.
The early line. Only on SportsGrid.
That is a wrap on the 2024, I guess. 4 into 5 ever so briefly. The 2024 NFL season's cooked. We are early 2025, which means the Super Bowl a year from now, 2026. Am I putting people's head in a pretzel as we approach 11 o'clock Eastern? I'm not sure. Here's what I do know. Super Bowl betting odds are out for a year from now that obviously you can invest in much, much sooner, like right this second if you really wanted to, if you have conviction. The question is, Tommy, Scott, do you have conviction? We're looking at it on the screen. These odds brought to you by FanDuel here. And Chiefs, plus 650. The Eagles, plus 650. Co-favorites, the teams that were just in the Super Bowl. Of course, Philadelphia, the winner. Then you have Baltimore, the Bills, 2 AFC teams that were right there in the mix. Lions, no surprise. The Niners could surprise some people, sitting there with the next best odds in the NFC at 14-1. Then you have the likes of the Packers, the Bengals, really got to shore up that defense, obviously. Commanders, can Jaden Daniels get it done as a sophomore? And then it really kind of drops off. Not necessarily as much in the odds, but in terms of the overall talent, as far as I'm concerned. In order, Texans, Chargers, Rams, Vikings, who, see what their quarterback situation is, Buccaneers, Bears, and so on and so forth. But, that gets into the nitty-gritty, middle-of-the-league kind of situation. If you were investing in something right now, Scott, where are you putting your money?
I'd probably go Cincinnati. The one team that seems to have the kryptonite to beat Patrick Mahomes in the AFC now. It's Cincinnati. They've done it before a couple of times, right? 19-1. That's not bad. I think they'll get the T. Higgins situation rectified. Whether they move on from him and bring somebody else in, or give him a long-term contract, which I kind of doubt. But I like Cincinnati. Joey B, phenomenal year, right? Everything went against them this season, and I think that's going to come back to the means. And I think everything goes their way this season. So you want to pick a team that you don't think these odds will be there come August, September.
Yes,
I think Cincinnati at 19-1 would be the one, Tom.
That was my pick as well. It's either that or the Commanders, and I think the better argument would be to make one for the Bengals because of how good Burrow is. And the argument the entire year for Burrow was if you just give them a competent defense, and their defense was terrible, right? And we're not even talking about a world-class defense like the Eagles, the top of the league. We're talking about a competent, middle-of-the-road defense. They were a playoff team. They would have won those games that they lost. They would have won one of those coin flip games. They would have ended up winning one of those, and they would have been in the playoffs. To say that they would have gone and made the Super Bowl, no, I'm not saying that, but give Burrow a competent defense that is average or slightly above average, and you can make the playoffs, have a shot at the division, and you have a spot to, again, like you said, be in the AFC Championship, and maybe not even playing the Chiefs. Maybe it'll be the Ravens or the Bills.
If you were looking at the top 5, Tom, the same question for you, Scott, but I'll start with Tom this time. If you're looking at the top 5 on the board, Chiefs, Eagles, Ravens, Bills, Lions, in that order, who are you fading?
Fading the Lions, and it's mostly due to their coordinators leaving. And everyone talks about this year, and it's not just a case with the Lions, but like the brain drain. The strong OC leaving, strong DC leaving, going on. They have to promote someone. Will there be growing pains? And this does not say that I won't ever have a Lions future, because if they do start off slow, there will be growing pains, but there's still enough talent, and with Dan Campbell as head coach, that they can get it ironed out as the season goes on. If that number drops to 15-1, that's a different story.
I'd probably say San Francisco, maybe Buffalo, which I got to say, what's the excuse now, Buffalo Bills fans, right? Before it was always, all right, we lost to Kansas City, but they won the Super Bowl, so at least we lost to the champs. Can't say that this year, and they didn't, Kansas City obviously didn't even come close to beating Philadelphia. So if you can't beat Kansas City, Buffalo, you took a major step backwards today, But I would go San Fran. I'm not the biggest Brock Purdy fan in the world. I'm not a basher, but they're coming up on a big year. He's due for a major contract. I wouldn't give it to him. You got the Deebo Samuel mess. You got Christian McCaffrey. This is the Dallas Mavericks found out, with Anthony Davis, right? This is the guy you traded for today. He's out a month. Well, this is the Christian McCaffrey that San Francisco acquired from Carolina, where all these teams are like, how's he staying healthy? He wasn't healthy this year, and I don't think he's going to be healthy next year. He's 1 year older, so I can see San Francisco continuing to go the wrong way.
Incredible time throughout this season, obviously getting the opportunity to do shows Monday, Thursday nights, at least with Tommy doing Pro Football Today Sundays with Scott and Joe Madden, as we did In-Game Live Pro Football Today, and so many different other opportunities that we've had the chance to work together and with this incredible crew behind the scenes that make all of this possible. Just because football season is over, folks, that doesn't mean we're going anywhere, because I assure you, there are still sports to bet on. If there are games to be played, there are wagers to be made, and hopefully money to be made as well. Thanks to the crew. Thanks to everyone for having us in studio. For Tom Scott, I'm Adam.